Greetings, my Beyond the Care podcast family. I am your host, Dr. Paula. So, you know the phrase, you learn something new every day. Today, we will definitely learn something new with our guest. Today, I have the honor of interviewing and speaking to Micheline Davis. Micheline is an established healthcare professional, but a tragic event in her family propelled her into the role of a caregiver. So let's listen to Micheline. Let's hear her story and how she has experienced this caregiver journey. Thank you, Micheline, for being here and for sharing your story. And so I know that something that you hear today will resonate with you, will speak to you, will move you. And I thank you for being here and listening to the Beyond the Care podcast. Let's welcome my guest today, Micheline Davis. Greetings, my Beyond the Care podcast family, and welcome. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Micheline Davis. Welcome, Micheline.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Paula.
Thank you for being here. So I'm just going to read a little bit of your esteemed bio, just to give the audience a little bit of background about you. Micheline Davis, Esquire, is the president and CEO of the National Medical Fellowships. She's among Modern Healthcare Magazine's top 25 most influential minority leaders in healthcare. Okay. She also founded the Social Impact and Community Investment Practice, an equity-centered, policy-led community health practice addressing social and political determinants of health. Serving under former New Jersey Governor John S. Corzine, Davis was the first African American in state history to serve as Chief Policy Counsel and the first African American and only the second woman to serve as New Jersey State Treasurer. She was the youngest person to serve as CEO of the New Jersey Lottery and served as a senior policy advisor in the New Jersey Department of Health and Senior Services. She's the co-author of Changing Missions, Changing Lives, How a Change Agent Can Turn the Ship and Create Impact, which provides a blueprint for those committed to leading systems change within organizations. She began her legal career as a trial litigator, is an honors graduate of Seton Hall University, yes, Seton Hall, and holds a Juris Doctorate from Seton Hall School of Law. She has executive education certificates in corporate social responsibility from the Harvard Business School and social impact strategy from the Wharton School of Business. All right, now. Yes. The dynamic Micheline Davis. Welcome again.
You are so kind. Thank you. Please know anything in that bio is proof positive of having praying parents. Very little of that is as a result of me. Please know.
Okay. Now we know Micheline, the professional, but today we're going to talk to you about your role as a caregiver. And, I saw on Facebook how you were sharing about being a caregiver for your mom. And I reached out to you and said, listen, I need you on my podcast. I was a caregiver for my mom who had dementia. And, as you and I have spoken about, it's a difficult job. It's a huge responsibility. And unless you're in those shoes, unless you walk in those shoes, people really don't understand. So I'm very excited, grateful to have you on today. So let's start out. Tell the audience a little bit about your caregiving journey, how you became a caregiver, who are you caring for?
Well, first of all, let me just begin by saying thank you. Thank you for inviting me into this community, but thank you so much for holding space for those in the community. One of the things that I say all the time is that it's exactly what you just indicated, right? Unless you have walked this path, right? You can be empathetic, but you really just don't know.
That's right.
And I will say I have had my mother with me since 2014.
Hmm.
As is much of our tradition. I have not placed her in a home somewhere. I've kept her home. I changed a lot of my about my life in order to be able to care for her. And as a result, it has been an interesting but nevertheless, right, still a blessed journey.
Right.
And I say that to say, what brought me to being a caregiver is the fact, as I look back now, I realize that my mother was probably showing some signs in 2012 after the death of my father, but that we really assumed that it was grief. You know, I
Mhm.
had parents who were wonderful. My father and mother met and got married in 1 month, and they were
Wow.
married for 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a
The day before my
blessing.
father left us and went home to glory, he literally told me to take his girlfriend out for a steak dinner. I mean, they still call each other girlfriend and boyfriend. So,
Oh.
we could understand if she, got lost driving home one day, that it was still within the grieving process. But what brought me to the stage of being a caregiver was when in 2014, my mother called my sister on Sunday morning
Mhm.
to ask my sister whether or not my mother was going to go pick her up to take her to church, or whether or not my sister was going to come and pick my mother up. And while she was on the phone with my sister who had MS, my
Mm.
sister said that she wasn't feeling quite well, but that she would get herself together, and but asked my mother to drive. And in the midst of that conversation, my sister had a heart attack and died. And my mom heard my sister kind of, scream out, and then just heard noise. And by the time she got to her house, which was only 2 blocks away, my sister's 8-year-old daughter answered the door and said that her mommy was asleep on the floor.
Whew. Wow.
So what's really interesting about my mother's journey is that my mother came to Alzheimer's through a psychotic break.
Mm.
She suffered a psychotic break as a result of that occurrence, and it ushered her into Alzheimer's. And I had never known that to be something that happened. It's the reason why it was like a light switch.
Mhm.
Overnight,
Mm.
the next day, she got lost in her own home. She was asking me where her bedroom was. I was like, what is happening right now? Like
Wow.
what are you saying? And so again, I thought it was grief and took her to see this wonderful brother psychiatrist who explained to me that he said it is grief, but it is grief that has caused a psychotic break because it
Mhm.
is grief mixed with shock. And as we continued to go to see him, that's when he said to me, "Listen, I think that you have traumatic onset on your hands."
Wow. Never heard of that. And, my doctoral research is in Alzheimer's and dementia care and never heard.
I never
Learn
heard it
some,
either.
right. Learn something new. So trauma-based onset.
That's it. That's it.
Wow. So tell us a little bit more about that if you're familiar with it.
As the doctor described it to me, my mother, who actually had some childhood trauma, right, as many of us do, some adverse childhood experiences, that he indicated that the trauma of my sister's sudden, unexpected passing on the
Mm,
phone with her literally caused the trauma-infused kind of psychotic break, and
mhm,
that as she was attempting to recover from it, he recognized that dementia and Alzheimer's had started to set in, but it wasn't a gradual thing,
mm,
and it was very quickly progressive.
mhm.
And that is when he just attempted to explain to me that I had um, that type of situation on my hands. And so he's like, listen, this is traumatic onset of Alzheimer's, and very quickly referred me to the head of psychiatry at the healthcare system where I was an executive vice president anyway. And that person actually diagnosed my mother in my office,
Wow.
like within 15 minutes.
Wow. So not
And
only are you dealing with the loss of your sister, now you're dealing with, technically kind of the loss of your mom, because when people have dementia and Alzheimer's, they're no longer the person that they once were. And it takes a while to realize that the person who you grew up with, the person who you known as mom, who you knew as mom, is no longer that same person, but someone else. So you have a lot on your hands at this point.
yes, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, what was interesting was that once she diagnosed my mother, Dr. Paula, then looked at me and said, "And how old are you?" And I was like, "Excuse me?" And um, gosh, I was like 42.
Mm-hmm.
And what was so interesting was the fact that I was like, "Why are you asking me that?" And she said, "Because your mother's mother had it. Now your mother has it."
Mm-hmm.
Right. And she was like, "So I'm going to tell you right now, you have to start taking precautions." And
Right.
that just blew me away,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the reality sets in that this can be my journey as well. Mhm. Which is scary, which
which
in
is
and of
scary.
itself is very scary. Wow.
Yeah.
So now, you know, all of these changes, you're taking care of your mom, and how has that experience been?
So I will tell you that in the very beginning, while I was at corporate, um, I really tried to do everything myself, right? Nobody else is going to touch my mommy. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to do everything she needs.
Mm-hmm.
And I distinctly recall it just, gosh, there was one year when my mother she suffered a heart attack. And when she suffered the heart attack, it was when I brought her home that I really tried to do everything myself. And it was so overwhelming. I remember like calling my cleaning service because she had had an incident, and I could hear my own voice quivering, right? Because I was trying to do her aftercare, which, as you know, like we had visiting nurses assigned to us, etc. Um, but also because she doesn't know what's happening to her
Mm-hmm.
because she's had a physical experience while she's already having a neurological challenge. It was so incredibly difficult. At the same time, this is my mother. So I'd love to tell you for a moment, who my mother was.
Mm-hmm.
My I say all the time I had the best parents in the entire world. I feel bad for everybody else who wasn't raised by them. My parents, they lived it, they were it. I, listen, I didn't know I wasn't royalty because they treated all of their children like we were. But more than that, my parents were foster parents to a lot of other kids. And so I
Mm-hmm.
had foster brothers and sisters all over the country now, as a result of it. My father was like the father to the entire community. My mother was the mother to the entire community. And I will tell you this, when I was in high school, kids used to run away from home and tell the
Mm-hmm.
guidance counselor that they were coming to live with me. And I remember being called down to the office and looking at the guidance counselor saying, there's a I'm saying, that there's a state-run system for this. Like they can't just decide to
To
come live
come
with
live
my
with.
family. Yeah, because that's how beloved they were in the
Mm-hmm.
community, right? My mother was a college professor. She was a social worker, right? So it just made sense. This was a woman who taught us the value, but also the love for education.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to understand that this is who this woman was.
Mm-hmm.
And I distinctly recall her coming downstairs one day with a book in her hand and saying, "Why am I reading like a first grader?"
Mm-hmm. Wow.
What's really difficult about being a caregiver to someone who has dementia or Alzheimer's is the slow recognition that something is happening to them
Yeah. Yeah.
and trying to keep their dignity and trying to convey to them that some things are changing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I historically have tried not to cry in front of my mother,
Mm-hmm.
especially about her care. However, I have failed on occasion. And one occasion in particular that I recall was when she looked at me and she said, "Hello, dear, who are you?" Very normal. This is a woman who, right, lives in my home. I sold my old house, bought a new house because there was a in-law suite. She
Mm-hmm.
and her live-in live there full time. I have a full-time caregiver that assists me now because I tried it in the beginning for several years without that and like to lose
Mm-hmm.
my life.
Mm-hmm.
And uh one day she looked at me and she asked me, who are you? And I told her. And then she said, mm. And then she looked at me and she said, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
And I just burst into tears
Wow.
because this incredibly elegant, bright, just really brilliant woman who, just gave everyone she touched us a thirst for education, could
Mm-hmm.
no longer read. She could no longer write. She didn't even know who she was. So when you look at things through a lens that she is experiencing, I thought about the fact that she must be afraid all the time because she's looking at us like, who are these people and where am I?
That's right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So initially, I will not lie to you, it felt super overwhelming. And I remember I do have a sibling. They live in California. Um, and yet I do this by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, for about 15 seconds, I remember feeling a little bit like it must be nice.
Mm.
They were off in Hawaii on a vacation, and I was like, it must be nice. Um,
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic.
yes.
The
And then,
sibling dynamics.
yeah, it really
Mm-hmm.
is, but that's a whole
Mm-hmm.
show. Like we
Oh
could talk
yeah.
about that.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I will tell you that what dawned on me was that my mother was a caregiver to so many of us, and
Mm-hmm.
she was such a loving mother that what changed for me was the fact that I realized it was an honor. What an honor to care for the woman of God. My father was a bishop, my mother was a first lady, right? They were
Mm-hmm.
pastor and pastor, and they raised us in such a way they didn't have to tell us not one Bible story because they lived one out loud,
Right.
right? Wow. How many kids can say that?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like she meant every single word in that book, right? You understand what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
she lived that in such a way that when for me, I adopted the thinking, I thought about it differently. It wasn't about what I had to do, it was what I got to do.
Right.
Because see, my sister was no longer here in order to do any of it,
Mm-hmm. Oh my God. You see, I'm getting all teary over here because at the end of the
right?
day, it is rewarding. It's a
Right?
difficult task, it's challenging, but it's rewarding knowing that we gave back and we were able to care for our parents, how they care for us. Listen, the reciprocity. Mm-hmm.
Right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when it became for me, what an honor, what a blessing to be able to get the doting on
Mm.
you, right?
Mm.
To
Mm.
be able to turn around now and do that for her,
Yeah.
right? It is joy. I don't know how it is that we don't have a Netflix special because we have some funny times up in here. There are
Mm.
days
Mm-hmm.
when, the struggle to get someone up and bathed and dressed and but if I tell her that her boyfriend's coming to see her, she is
Yes, we have videos from my mom that we watch still and will just crack up. But I have to share
full
this
of
with you. I remember, when my mom had Alzheimer's and I was traveling for work a lot. And I was away at the time and I called home and one of my sisters was there and I'm on the phone and she said, well, who are you? And I said, Paula. She said, well, who's your mother? I said, you are. She said, oh, I didn't know that. So my sister thought this was hilarious. And she was like, see, we told you you were adopted. See? So she will never let me live that down. So I understand the who are you? But
that's
that's one
really
of my
nice. Yeah, she stays most days she's still really pleasant.
mm-hmm.
So she's great with the compliments. So she's like, "Oh, you're a pretty little girl." Like, right? You're a pretty little girl. Who's kin to you, right? And I'm just like, you know? So like we make it what we need it to be. There are times
Mm-hmm.
now when she's lost her language. She can begin a sentence, but then the words are slippery, is what we call them, right?
Mm-hmm.
She'll say, "Hi, dear, how are you?" But
Mm-hmm.
then she'll say train, kitchen, night. Like she can't put the words together, right? She'll say hen. She can't put them together. But we will make a song out of whatever those words are.
Oh, that's cute. Mm-hmm.
right? So we're gonna find our joy. And so this is hilarious. Are you ready for this? The living laughs at me all the time. You
Mm-hmm.
know how I can get her to recognize me? If I start dancing around, she'll say, she'll shake her head and say, "That's nobody but my crazy little child." So she knows that. She knows that.
Why did
There
I
are
have a
times when
flashback of Jungle Fever? Dance, dancing for his mama.
Gator, Gator. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. I mean, so I think that's funny because I'm like, I don't remember dancing around as a kid, but if it for some reason
It
that triggers
triggers
for her,
for
and
her.
she'll say,
Mm-hmm.
she'll shake her head and go, "Lord have mercy," and she'll tell the aide, "That's nobody but my crazy child." So she knows that.
Oh.
She
Mm-hmm.
also knows that she has a daughter named Micheline.
Mm-hmm.
She knows that that daughter takes care of her, but she thinks that she doesn't come visit her. So she'll
Hmm.
say, she hasn't come to visit me in such a long time. I don't know why. So I'll sit down with her and I'll say, tell me about her. Tell me about the last time you saw her. And then there are some times when I'll leave the room and come back in and act like I've come for a visit. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have
Mm-hmm.
to she'll say, why haven't you been to see me? I have no, meanwhile, the woman lives in my house.
Right, right, right. Mm-hmm.
She sees me multiple times throughout the day. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I shifted careers. This is one of those aspects of the change. I retired from corporate.
Mm-hmm.
I now run a national nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
It still requires me to travel quite a bit, but it's a little bit different, right? When I was in corporate, I was overseeing global health, so I was everywhere.
Mm.
This one, it's at least it's domestic travel. A lot of it, some of it is
Right.
still international. At the end of this month, it will be, but um, and I'm only able to do that because of the blessing of the caregiver that I have,
Mm.
right? Like the
Mm.
the the additional aide who is with me has been a blessing. I tell her all the time that she did not exist before I prayed her into being.
Mm. Nice.
Yeah,
Nice. Mm-hmm.
yeah. Because you really want someone who's going to treat your mother in a loving way. And it's hard out here to find that. It is
Yeah,
really hard.
it is.
Um, but there are cameras everywhere and like sometimes I'll dial because I can speak to them through the camera. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll dial in and I'll see her and she'll be painting my mother's nails or kissing her on
Mm.
the forehead or,
Mm-hmm.
plaiting up her hair, just, something loving. And so that
Mm-hmm.
let me know that I was blessed to
Have the
find the
right
right person.
person.
But
Mm-hmm.
it has been, you are correct. It is in fact a journey. There are high highs and there have been some low lows.
Mm-hmm. So, what gets you through this journey? How do you cope?
Yeah. So I am really blessed. I'm blessed with the fact that I've got some great girlfriends.
Mm.
Um, they might not have that experience. And I've had several of them come back to me and say, like, after their parent has aged or had an injury of some kind or experienced an illness, and they've said, "Oh my gosh, like you've been dealing with this all these years." Um, but I have ones oh, you're about to make me cry.
Mm.
Um, who like they'll bring their mother to come sit with my mother.
Mm.
They will come here for the holiday because they know that while I have her, I need to be here with her,
Right.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
I host them and their
Mm-hmm.
mothers, you know, and they understand that I'm limited sometimes in what I can go and be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've had folks who, you know, as you know, dementia and Alzheimer's makes a person also very physically frail.
Mm.
And so 7 months after my mother had a massive heart attack, she suffered a major stroke.
Mm.
And I broke my foot trying to get to her, shattered it, and had
Mm.
surgery.
Mm.
And so I had friends who around the clock came here. They formed shifts
Mm.
to take care of us both, really,
Both of you.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's incredible. But the foundational element, I must say, because who sent me those friends, for me, has a lot to do with faith, right? I tell them all, I prayed you into being, and I pray them the blessings that they have been to me right back,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Um, and so my faith has got me through. And listen, we have tangled, right? I
Mm-hmm.
have had some conversations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have had to have some real dialogue because I'm like, this is a lot.
Mhm.
This is a lot. And I've said to him, I need you to take a second look at my file because I think you got me mixed up with somebody. Because it's been a lot. But I will tell you that even that has helped me to transition from, I remember I felt like I used to go to God in a very formal manner.
Mhm.
And now I just, start talking to him in the midst of the day like, Abba Daddy, you're gonna have to fix this,
Mm, mhm, mhm,
right? Because I'm just like, I take the wheel. I can't do it. I can't do it.
mhm. Yeah.
Because she's had some days where she's been violent,
Mhm, mhm.
because it's what the disease progresses. It's what the
Yes.
disease does, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
it breaks your heart because for a woman who would never hurt a fly, to strike you really hard. She's strong, girl.
Mm, mhm.
It was a shocker for me. Like the
Yes.
aide was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you." Yeah.
And again,
Um,
realizing that that's not
it's
your
not,
mom.
it's
That's
not her.
that's someone the disease has taken over her, you know. Hmm. Hmm. But one of the things that I found in my research, because I did research and interview African American caregivers, is that we rely heavily on our faith as the foundation of caring for
Yes.
a loved one with dementia. What do we always say? God is not going to give us more than what we can bear, and I'm going to trust in Him, and I can get it done. And, we really have to have that foundational belief in our faith.
I was just like, and I can't doubt him, although I had to say to him, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief.
Mm,
And when I tell you that in the last September, she had a seizure, she's never had a seizure, she had a seizure and collapsed. And I was on the West Coast and had to get back to
mm,
her here. It was, and they were like, "Miss, this is it. Come now."
mm. Wow.
Oh, yeah. And I was praying on the plane and praying in the airport. And I remember I walked into the room, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. And they were like, listen, she's not responsive. They were telling
Mm,
me everything. And I walked up to that bed and I said, Mommy, I'm here. She opened
mm,
her eyes.
mm, mm,
And so I looked over at them and I was like, it's not today.
That's
And
right.
she's so physically strong. It's amazing. They can't believe, listen, when they diagnosed her, they said on average, you will have 5 to 7 years with her
Hmm.
as a result of, the aggressive nature of her Alzheimer's, right? So how many years ago was that, right? It's 2026, y'all. That was in 2014.
Wow. Okay. Hmm.
Her faith was always so strong,
Hmm.
that we were just like, it's like God's like his daughter for real, like for real. Um,
Hmm.
so it's been really interesting, and we try to make the most of the journey as we go through it.
Absolutely. What advice would you give to other caregivers, or what would you say to them?
The advice that I would give first, I'd give to everybody, whether or not they are a current caregiver or not, and that is to be a really good friend to those in your friendship circle.
Mm,
And I say that because the chances of one of you becoming a caregiver before you leave this planet are so high
oh yeah.
that you want to knit yourselves together now,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So if you've been blessed enough to have friends, treat them like friends. Be friendly. Be intentional about your friendships. Two, get yourself some good friends. Get the ones who care more about people than they do about posting.
mm,
Get some friends who don't just want to take the selfie, but are willing to take the photo of the rest of the group. Like get those friends because you're going to need the ones who are willing to help you stand up, to
mm,
hold you up when you become a caregiver, right? The second thing I would say to them after develop your friendships is really develop your faith. I've said what works for me. I don't care what faith you choose, but get one. If
mhm,
you do not believe in a higher calling and a greater purpose, that there is something orchestrating everything that is happening, that life is not happening to you, that it's happening for you, then being a caregiver has a higher likelihood of pressing you into depression,
Mm, mm,
right?
yes.
So the reason why I want people to develop a faith is so that you can understand that it's not all on your shoulders,
Mm,
that you are holding it, but that there is something, someone holding you.
that's right.
That when you feel the absolute most alone, you are not.
Mm, mm,
That you are not alone. That as you are carrying the burden of caregiving, there is someone carrying the blessing of your caregiving journey, right?
mm,
And so that's what I want to make certain that they know, right?
mhm,
I also would love to make certain that I say something to them about taking care of themselves. And that is because I had a dear friend who, who she herself was a caregiver to her father. It's really what bonded us together. She was her father's caregiver. I was my mother's caregiver. Her father passed away
mhm,
and she was dead in 6 months
mm,
because she had stage 4 cancer that she never even went to get checked until
yeah,
after her father passed. And by the time she went, it was stage
too
4
late. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah.
and she passed away.
Mm-hmm,
3 years ago, I lost my best friend in the galaxy
mm,
a year to the day after her mother's passing.
mm,
She had a blood clot. She said she had tightness in her knee.
mm-hmm,
She got on a plane. I was on the phone with her. She hung up the phone. They took off. She was going to call me when she landed. When she landed and was walking off that plane,
mm, mhm,
she passed away.
mm.
And it was because she was so used to ignoring whatever she was
Herself.
feeling
Mm-hmm, yeah.
that she did during her caregiving journey for her mother with dementia,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah.
right? So I will tell you that when I was trying to do this all by myself, Dr. Paula, I wasn't taking care of myself. I gained a lot of weight. I did a lot of stuff. And then when I had to realize I need to tap into resources here
Mm,
and that I'm blessed enough to have them, I need to figure out a more sustainable way. When I began to ask others for help,
mhm,
even if it was so that I could go out and take a walk so I could exercise, it all just started coming off because so much of it was really also like cortisol infused, right? It
mm,
was the stress,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
right? So our shoulders are broad, but they are not meant to
To
carry
carry.
the entire world.
Absolutely. And I think you hit it right on the head. You have to take the time, as difficult as it is, we have to take the time as caregivers to care for yourself. And that's my tagline. While I'm caring for my loved one, who's caring for me? And that's really why I'm doing this podcast, because we have to let others know that, yes, you have this journey of caring for your loved one, but you can't forget about yourself as well. Because what do they say on the airplane? You have to put your oxygen mask on first. So if you don't have the oxygen, your oxygen mask, you can't even care for your loved one. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Anything else you'd like to share with the audience? I appreciate your journey. I appreciate you sharing your story. Is there any other parting words that you'd like to share with others?
Yeah. So I would tell them to like, follow, and share the Beyond the Care podcast.
Thank you.
And the reason why I'm saying that is because being in community is such an important aspect for giving us the strength to weather this journey. And I'm grateful to you for holding a space for caregivers Because one of the issues is that we pour so much into the caregiving that, quite frankly, there are things I've never talked to people about, right?
Mhm.
I've never talked to people about um, that make it feel heavier than I think that, right, it needs to be.
Mhm.
And I think that being an intentional community, especially right now, when every headline is concerning, when there are lots of threats to health and healthcare and access for the people that we care about,
Mhm.
right? That we need to make certain that we understand, listen, if we are going to be all we have, then we better act like we are all we need.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And there are resources out there. you know um a lot of people are not aware of them, but there are definitely resources for caregivers. So if you have the opportunity, tap into the resources. I know most in New Jersey, for sure, most of the municipalities and towns have the age friendly programs. Some of them have caregiving support. You have the Alzheimer's Association. There are support groups for caregivers. So definitely tap into whatever resources that you're aware of, or research and find resources to help support you along your journey. Thank you. We kind of just touched the surface, but I appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time to share your story with us. We are praying for you along your journey and for your mom. And if there's anything that I can do to help you, help anyone listening, please reach out to me. So thank you, my Beyond the Care podcast family. Thank you, Micheline, so much. Appreciate you, and definitely all the best to you and your mom.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for being the person who's holding up this community. Thank you.
Thank you.